Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Sports Tragic. And I have a very special guest, special because he's the kind of sports tragic that I relate to the most. Someone who kind of carries over the passion of watching sports or following sports into quizzing about sports as well, because that's pretty much the only thing that I have done with all my heart, all my life. So I have Deepanjan Deb, and apart from being a sports quizzer, he's a senior executive in Gallup, an XLRI alumnus, and MNIT Allahabad alumnus. Welcome, Dida. Welcome
Thank you so
on
much,
this
Aniket.
episode.
Finally, we get to speak
Absolutely, it's
after
been a
I've been following your following your video series and of course following your journey in the world of sports since almost a decade now. So look forward to this interaction.
thank you so much. I mean, the video series I think stemmed out of the fact that I have friends who are equally maniacal about sports as I am, and I just wanted to get together different people to talk about journey and foray into sports, and basically explore that because we all have different initiation points into what we very passionately follow. And I just thought I'll do the same with you. And if you could talk me through, and I'll make this episode slightly quiz centric because, I mean, let's be honest, we do that very honestly and very earnestly for that matter. So what's the first like introduction into sports, Rita? Like a proper introduction into sports?
My proper introduction to sports.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very basically I just remember vaguely what happened because I was seated on my mother's lap. And the 1988, I was like 4 years old. And the 1988 Wimbledon was going on, and Graf had beaten Navratilova. I remember that vividly. Of course, I don't remember the details of the match and all. And I think that was the first thing that I remember after so many years now. And then I think the first proper thing would be World Cup 1990, although I was still very young, but I remember that things were going on. Something was going on in the TV and all of those things. But if you ask me, to be honest, very proper understanding, I would say the World Cup 1992. Like I was very young. I used to come to my mama's place and would watch, and I was a huge fan of Imran Khan then. And of course, Tendulkar was somebody that I followed since. But those cricket and tennis followed parallelly, Wimbledon and French Open and all those things. They used to show from the semis and quarters during those times. But if you look at how the transition happened is because I was put into swimming learning swimming at the Nehru Stadium in Guwahati at a very young age. So that built in, and of course I was playing athletics and cricket in school. So playing sports and watching sports actually eventually led to, of course, quizzing came very late, right? Quizzing, the whole proportion of quizzing and sports quizzing as such evolved very later on as a genre. So I would say my fascination towards sports started from watching and playing more, and and eventually that translated into quizzing as a subset, because if you follow something and the reading part of the same thing becomes much more easier, right? So I'll tell you the other history behind it. My mom played carom, represented LIC at a very national level. So sports somewhere is in our family. Even now, when my mom used to go to office, or my parents, even now they open the page newspaper and the first thing that they go is the sports page. So I think somewhere it is in the genes, and culmination of all of those things eventually led from one thing to another and all of those things. But I would still say that even now I retain my passion for watching and playing a lot. Of course, with COVID times and all things of playing has reduced a little bit, but whenever I get a chance to play, I play. So that's about it.
Very interesting. And because you talked about your parents' influence into following sports as well, what was like the first event where your father or your mother took you to watch it, and not to swimming classes, but to watch an event which would be of some level? It could be a district level match for that matter. But what was the first event, if you can tell us that?
So I played, and I still play carom at a pretty decent level. So if you ask me of all the sports that I passionately follow or play, carom was still my number one sport, because I have been lucky enough to captain both NIT Allahabad as well as XLRI in carom. So carom was a family sport for us because my father played in office, my SBI, my mom played it in LIC. So I very, very young, I've been watching those competitions, as in the proper competitions which used to happen. So I think if you ask me the competitions that I watched, it was carom first, and then I played chess representing my school. So those were the two early things that I played. And I, with respect to watching a big event, I would say, the one-day matches which happened in Guwahati. Of course, I did go to watch some other local tournaments that used to happen. But I would say that I actually don't remember the first big match apart from cricket. What I was, because whatever things used to happen here at the district level or at a local level, I got some chance to watch. But I actually don't have a distinct memory which was the first match I went. But yes, the competitions I went to watch. I went to watch the carom competitions. I went to watch the swimming competitions because I remember when I was in class 1, there was a large swimming event which happened in Guwahati, and the Guwahati National pool was Olympic size pool. Yeah. So we had divers who had come from the UK. So they and I was like, I still have that fear of height, and when I saw them like from the top using somersaults and diving like from the absolute top, that was perhaps the first experience of an international sport for me, because those were, I don't know if they were Olympic divers or but they were representing the UK. I know that because they had come to Guwahati for some international meet or some meet, and watching those divers dive from absolutely the top, and I still remember I was in class 1 or 2. That definitely is my first foray of watching somebody at a very high level. And Assam at that time had a very good, they had Mithu Borua, who is the mother of Rian Parag. Yeah. I saw her swim at train at her peak. They had Elvis Ali Hazarika, another legend from Assam. So I was lucky to see some, swimming stars at a very young age, because I also, started my training then. So that's the vague remembrance. But I think the ODI matches in Guwahati would be my first, big thing, considering cricket as a big sport in India.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. But as you would have grown older, I'm sure because as you grow older, you also tend to have choices, right? You can choose to follow something else. And I'm sure like a lot of people we know, we would have chosen sports and not something else as the, like the pastime that we would indulge most in. We would spend most hours doing that. I mean, waking up early to watch matches, or like you mentioned, starting to read the newspaper from the last 4 pages, or collecting sports stars from back in the day. I'm sure most of us
still have them, still have them at our disposal. My mom is saying that you just have increased my workload so much, but somewhere she's also happy that the old editions are still there.
Yeah, so that exactly, like how did that happen? Why sports and not something else? Where does that connect come from? Were they heroes that you looked up to who were just instant idols, people we had no connect with? And I'll come to that in detail later. But just what made you choose sports when growing up as a kid, as an adolescent, you have other options to do as well, right? But you stuck with sports. How did that come about?
I look now I am in the field of behavioral economics, right? I deal with cognitive psychology, and I deal also with self-awareness as a scientific area of work. And a lot of people so I also do some little bit of, not directly as much of my job doesn't allow me, but I'm trained to do executive coaching, and I do conversations around that. So why do you behave in the way you behave? Of course, there is something called trait theory in behavioral economics, which talks about what are your traits. There is another school of thought which talks about type theory, like who you are as a person, personality types.
Yeah.
So the root behind all of this is the fact that human behavior doesn't change unless you go through a life-changing scenario. Experience. And life-changing scenario can be like a COVID is a life-changing scenario.
Yeah.
Say death of a near and dear one is a life-changing scenario. Surviving an accident is a life-changing scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why, for example, suppose you were a very risk-averse person, and then suddenly you survive and you realize that what's the perspective of life. You then become completely, carefree, and you start taking more risks.
Yeah.
Because you suddenly change your perspective changes, right?
Yeah.
But unless you go through such life-changing events or situations, you generally remain who you are and how you have been brought up from childhood, right? So even now, if I look at myself, I ask myself this question a lot of times: why do sports fascinates me so much? Why do 75% of my books are sports books?
Yeah.
Right? Why do
Yeah.
perhaps 80% of my subscriptions are sports subscriptions?
Yeah.
Of course, the answer to it from a thing is that because I've been used to doing it, and that's the first comfort zone for me, right? And I think the more important thing is that because I, as an individual, enjoy competition. Because I was thrown into competition, I took part in like 1-minute contest. Those used to happen at Guwahati during this time.
Yeah.
And there's a very funny story about it is that at that point of time, I went to a 1-minute contest, and just because I was in class 2 or 3. That was on a Sunday afternoon or something. And Sunday morning, I went to the barber and shaved my head, and I was like very small hair. And I went, and what they did was they gave us to tie rubber bands on your hair. So if I would have had longer hair, I could have easily tied them. But I tried, and the rubber band started falling off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that there is no substitute to making your hands dirty. Like why sports is because I've taken part in a lot of competitions, be it chess, be it carom. So that competitive spirit, the spirit of competition. I'm not talking about results. I'm just talking about competing. I enjoy competing. And because I enjoy competing, and because I enjoy competing in events that have a tangible outcome, which is why I also enjoy sports, which is why I don't know, this is something beyond, on a personal level, I've discussed a lot with you, right? I don't enjoy running that much.
Yeah.
But if you give me to play tennis for 2 hours, 3 hours, I enjoy because I'll play with somebody, even if it's a practice match. I might lose, but there is an outcome to it, right? So I think that is the behavioral reason why I enjoy sports so much. And the other reason is that because I've been doing it from childhood, I've taken part in events, I've taken part in competitions. So the fascination of competition is something that really keeps me going. Even now, I'm in a role where I manage sales for Gallup, based out of Bombay. The whole, I get a kick out of sales because it gives you a feeling of competition, right? You're trying to get something, you're trying to acquire a new client, or you're trying to do something. And that is also, and your personality cannot be different in professional life, and your personality cannot be different in personal life.
Yeah.
So I think that is why I've enjoyed sport, and that is why perhaps even when I quiz, I try to do it competitively and try to get that sporting feeling into a quiz also.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit of long answer, but I just gave you the behavioral part of why I perhaps have been doing this.
No, I'm here to listen, and it's a very interesting answer. Actually, I'm very fascinated by why you choose to follow sports, because it's not that for me. I mean, I see sports as a performative art, which just evokes a lot of emotions in me, and to an extent,
there is another reason I will tell you. Just go ahead and complete what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I just feel that I'm very close to acknowledging the Olympic Creed, which says that sport is about taking part and not winning. I do find the kick in supporting people though in sports. Yeah, I find people who I associate with, and most of them, in fact, now that I don't have enough time to kind of follow everything that I would wish to, I kind of pick and choose, and I have a very weird set of teams or entities or sports persons who I really follow. Like it's very unfortunate that I don't manage to follow as many people as I would wish to, but very few entities that I really, really follow, where I would, do things that I used to do, say 15, 20 years ago, where I would stay up or read whatever I would manage to find about these people and things like that. But it does not come out of this competitive feeling. It does not, it stems from the fact that I'm intrigued by these people, and I would like to know more about what they are doing, because I'm fascinated by the things that they manage to do and the emotion it evokes in me. I have no correlation with most of the people that I'm massive fans of. Like, I mean, I would never manage to meet Katie Ledecky or Michael Phelps in my life, but I mean, or for that matter, watch.
You never know, you might, but
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would not say never say never, but like, yeah, I wouldn't say never, but yeah, I mean, there's a very unlikely chance that that would happen. But I do it because I kind of find it very fascinating, and I was thrust into sports because of my father's inclination towards it. And
Yeah.
I also believe that within sports or within pastimes, we all have our different reasons to be passionate about. Like my father devoted his life to cricket, but he devoted his life to playing cricket and coaching kids who wanted to play cricket, which is astonishingly uh, unrewarding. Uh, as I looked at it, is because over a period of time, it kind of became obsolete what he was trying to do with a bunch of people, and that's how I saw it. And obviously, he didn't see it that way. I'm just putting two points of view over here. But I looked at sports as something which was just pure out of interest, and it just happens to be that I managed to make a career out of it. And but yeah, I'm completely in coherence with what you're saying, and I completely respect that is where it stems from. And we all have our own traits, right, Data? So what's the point in following the same thing with the same intention of following?
That
But
is
you
the
were
whole
saying
point,
something
right?
else.
Every
Yeah, go
person
ahead.
is different. Every
Yeah,
person is different, and we need to acknowledge the fact that he or she is different.
yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
do for a living. Like
Yeah.
that's what I do for a living, and that's what I speak on conferences, speak to clients to tell them that you need to understand that everyone is not the same, and that's why the way of measuring or analyzing or judging everyone cannot be through the same lens. There has to be a common differentiator between them, right? So absolutely
I
right.
have a question on that. I have a follow-up question because you mentioned competitiveness and you kind of brought it up, but I'll thrust this conversation into that for the remaining part of this. Is that you mentioned sports quizzing, right? So one, like how did sports quizzing happen or quizzing in general happen? Two, you went to very prestigious institutions, which would have taken up a lot of your time. I'm not sure how much time it would have taken for you to do engineering, but definitely the MBA would have taken a lot of time per day. And how do you still manage to kind of do something which, as we know, quizzing at a very high level is not that easy to manage. One, it's not very easy to break in that circle of finalists. That's what I call, because when prelims happen, you would have 100 people in the room. When the finals happen, you literally have 18 people in the room who are six teams of three members each. How did that happen? They take a lot of effort from your end. And how do you manage to kind of keep up with their kids who are just so much better at accessing the internet than us these days? But how do you manage to keep up with that?
So how did quizzing happen? Is because quizzing happened because I was in class 4, and one of my school seniors was a guy called Satyajit Chetri. He ended up in NIT Warangal, and he is now I think in the US. He was a very very good quizzer from our school, and of course at a pan India level, he was a very very good quizzer in many things. Not just quizzer, he was very well read. He had depth of knowledge and all of those things. So that was, I had no idea of what quizzing was and all of those things, but we used to read newspapers at least very very regularly. Even now I do that. So there was a Maggie quiz, and Satyajit Chetri was assigned. He was about 6 years senior to me, I think 5 or 6 years senior to me. He was assigned of selecting the school team. So that is when I think some competition happened, and I got selected. And then he started training us, and um, we went to Don Bosco was the biggest school in Guwahati at that point of
Yeah.
time. It still is, perhaps. So I was representing my school, Nichols, and the whole, there were two rounds. One, and that's in the first round. Excuse me, the auditorium was packed, and the very pride of representing the school and with the packed auditorium and people cheering for you, and we managed to win that. Eventually, we lost in the larger final, but it's not about the winning or losing, but the fact that I was able to represent my school. Still, that gave me goosebumps. I still remember. Since then, and I started taking, the school also encouraged me to take part, and eventually, after till class 9, 10, I had my regular teammates at school, and then 11, 12, when a very close friend of mine, Abhilash Medhi, he went to NIT Nagpur, and now he is a professor of history in the US. So he was my quizzing teammate. in 11, 12, when he was in NIT Nagpur, I was in NIT Allahabad. Whenever we used to come to Guwahati, we used to quiz up and all of those things. And then eventually when I went to NIT Allahabad, before that there was no, I think there were a few cricket quizzes which happened in Guwahati and I went and all of those things. But then when I went to NIT Allahabad, one of my seniors and very close friend now, Anindya Bhattacharya, was instrumental in starting something called Nausiomania, which was at that point of time one of the earliest quiz festivals in the country. Like we used to have cultural festivals, technical festivals, and all those things. So Nausiomania brought in Pranab Mukherjee. I know, there is, Pranab Mukherjee was big at the time, but he actually he asked questions that resonated with what I watched.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, this is perhaps the most fascinating moment of my life. I was in NIT Allahabad and the Olympics 2004 was going on. Even before Olympics 2004 was going on, that year, I moved from first year to second year. And that was the year I bought a desktop.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a computer. I had no, but still I'm technically very challenged. So my friends from UP and other parts of India, like they got a very high scores in computer programming. I just managed to scrape through because my knowledge of computer and technology is very, very bad. So I bought a computer then, and you won't believe, you will start laughing when you hear it. Because other people should not have access to your data, so they told us just put in a password so that only you can access it and all of those things. Do you know what password I put in? Alberto Yondoran. No one of my friends had any clue, because what happened is then I forgot spelling. I forgot the spelling of Yondoran, what I had put in. I mistakenly put in the wrong spelling.
Yeah.
And my friend, who is now an IAS officer in Rajasthan, he started abusing me. What the hell? Who is this guy? And what have you done? Basically, my entire computer had to be formatted because my password could not be retracted.
Okay.
Okay. That year, the Olympics was happening, and it was raining. It was raining incessantly. We didn't have a TV. The TV was not working in our common room. There was a place behind the hostel where it was a PCO. It was raining. I didn't have an umbrella. I went because I wanted to watch Thorpe compete against Phelps and Hugenband in what I still feel is the race of the century.
Yeah.
I was drenched and I made the PCO guy tune in, ensure that he opens up the DD Metro or DD1. I don't know where it was showing. Yeah. I managed to watch it and I come back drenched. Yeah. Really believe is perhaps the most craziest thing that I've done, because like it was at night, or I don't remember the timing exactly. But that, I think even now I watch more. I follow, right?
Yeah.
So that's how quizzing. And then I think at NIT Allahabad, I was lucky to go to IIT Kanpur, IIT BHU, and there a lot of sports quizzes used to happen. Yeah. All said and done, I would still credit Pranab Mukherjee to be a very big factor, because he asked questions like Hakeem Olajuwon sponsoring a Nigerian team in the Olympics, right? Yeah. He asked questions on Northeastern people. He asked questions on people I read in newspapers, but when people never considered good enough to be asked in a quiz, right?
Yeah.
And
he intrigued you. He intrigued you with his questions.
He intrigued you to the point that really said, why should I not ask a question about Dinko Singh?
Yeah.
Right? Why should a question always be asked on, say, I don't know, say Michael Jordan or anybody, with no disrespect to them, right?
Yeah.
And that made me, go deeper, I would say. So I had a choice to go to read many kinds of things, but I would be very honest with the fact that I don't know, because I started reading sports books more nowadays because of the habit. But I think that was the time when I decided to make myself kind of unidimensional. I didn't care about anything because I got a fascination in that. And one thing led to the other, and then I started also doing well. That perhaps also would be a factor. Then I went to Calcutta for 3 years. I partnered with people like Shovigda and others.
Yeah.
And eventually one thing led to the other, and I think that's how. But if you ask me how am I continuing now, I would say that I'm lucky to have Prithvish as my teammate, because we are very, very close friends and we discuss so many things beyond the quizzing perspective. And to have Prithvish as a teammate, I think for the last so many years makes my life easy. So even when we were participating as a team. So I'm honored to have him. And it was only Prithvish that brought me back into quizzing. I had quit quizzing in 2012 after the Tata Crucible National Finals. I decided enough is enough. I want to enjoy life. I'm entering into corporate world. I have to focus on my career. But one fine day, Prithvish pings me and said, "Would you go to barefoot?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" If Prithvish is asking me, I said, at least I don't need to do it. As in barefoot, I always had a soft corner because of so many reasons, right? You know that. So I think that is how it started in 2015. I think it's like 15 or 16. I don't remember the year. And that's how I'm continuing. But I think all of those quizzing apart, I read my stuff, I follow my sport, I watch my sport, I play my sport. Quizzing, of course, is a subset of it, and that's how
you touched upon. Fair enough. And you touched upon very interesting, by the way. I mean, my first quiz was also a Maggie quiz, so I kind of relate to that. Two, you named a lot of events that we have both taken part in. From Nozomonia was always very, very well conducted. I think I went once when Joyda was conducting the cricket quiz. I think it was cricket or sports quiz. I'm not sure what quiz it was, but it must have been. It could have been either actually. And IIT Kanpur, BITS Pilani, IIT BHU, all wonderful quiz fests, which kind of made the college-going crowd kind of really in the.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely look forward to it. And we kind of, for those 3 days, quizzing was cool. Like, because you were in a fest where there were people from other activities as well. Because otherwise, quizzing is a very boring, mundane activity, usually attributed to nerds who don't see a lot of people attending their events. But I remember the IIT Kanpur Bollywood quiz, for example, always had a filled auditorium. And
absolutely,
once I came to college, because in school auditoriums were filled because people had to go and watch the events, right? The moment people had a choice to go or not go, basically people opted to not see quizzes. And that's just a common thread that we kind of common thing that still happens in quizzes, that we don't have too many people in the audience, unless the quiz of course is in Guwahati, in which every time I've gone to Guwahati to quiz, it's always been a packed ITM Goa.
Yeah, so, the city has a lot of passion towards quizzing,
absolutely.
Yeah. So you have to give it to the city.
Also, the amount of prize money that they used to give was incredible back in the day. To hand out a lakh.
Yeah, and that quiz was actually very good. It brought in people from different parts of India. So yeah, absolutely correct.
No,
but
I would ask you something though, because I need to cut you over there and ask you that you said that after 2012 Crucible final, you thought you'll live your life and not obsess over quizzing, right? And at what point, or rather just generally, not that instance in general, but at what time does quizzing become exhausting for you? Or does it become exhausting at all?
I'll tell you why it became exhausting for me. I'm absolutely proud about the fact that I represented XLRI and won Crucible twice. I'm absolutely proud about it,
Yeah.
No one can take that away from me. But the point is that, I was reading things that I would not read.
Yeah.
And that was creating a mental pressure on me.
Yeah.
That I was trying to retain information which perhaps in a normal world I would not do. You ask me what is a financial concept or what is a management concept, I can explain it to you. But if I have to remember a lot of things, remember a lot of CEOs, remember a lot of normal reading, it's okay. But, and quizzes like Crucible make you to recollect faster. For you to recollect faster, you have to read a lot of things. Now, I was not ready to do that when I was entering into my professional life in an area that I wanted to work in. It's 9 years now, I'm still with Gala, right?
Yeah.
I'm working in an area that I really wanted to work in. I was absolutely sure in my mind that I cannot take that pressure. For many people who are much more talented than me, they can do that. But I'm not that talented. I know my limitations.
Yeah.
That is where self-awareness comes in, the area that I work in, all of those things. I know my limit. I'm not that talented enough to remember so many things, right? And plus, when I knew that it was creating a pressure on my head, and there's no point, and I don't quiz for money, right? Yeah. So neither was the motivation. Money is the motivation now. So, and why would I do that? And I felt that it was creating a lot. And I'll tell you, the trigger point was when I was with my friends in Kerala for vacation just after XLRI, and my friends were enjoying on the beach, and I was reading notes for Crucible final. I realized, no, that's not worth it. That is when the whole point came in, and I moved on. Of course, I genuinely liked quizzing as a hobby, and Prithvish was responsible for bringing me back into quizzing after 4 years. I'm really grateful to him for that. But now I enjoy it, right?
Preparation for quizzes is a weird one, isn't it, Dheera? I mean, if you like something, then preparation doesn't seem like preparation. Then you're just reading more and more about things. Yeah.
No, exactly.
When it
you
becomes
can
a task,
read on things you like, but I cannot read about, say, art history.
Yeah.
Although I have painted at a decent level till, but that doesn't fascinate me. And just I'm giving an example. So that is when I decided what is not natural to me, I'll not do that. Right. So I read random things on sports. So sports quizzing is not something, and even if I read, I keep on reading random things. There's no lying about the fact, right? I keep on reading stories from 1900 Olympics. I keep on reading stories from chess history, random things. But when I'm reading, it doesn't feel like I'm putting an effort on me, because that subject, that domain is closer to my heart. And more importantly, of course, now quizzing has changed so much. But there was a time when I used to quiz in Calcutta, or I used to quiz in the 2000s. You could not do well in a sports quiz if you have not followed something. But now you can win a sports quiz without not watching anything. It has changed. Yeah, like everything, it has changed. Like Bishop Vijay Stan is somebody I really respect, because he used to conduct quizzes where you have followed something. He will show you videos, he'll show you photos, he'll show you incidents. You cannot memorize or mark them, right? That style of quizzing has reduced significantly, I think, over the period of time, because it has become like any other activity where you need to read the past to appreciate the present, and which is fair enough, which is okay. There can be school of thoughts. But I'm saying that you cannot have depth in everything. It's not humanly possible. You might have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, but at least for someone who is like mediocre and not as talented as other people are, I cannot put on pressure to remember things because they'll be asked in a quiz. I'm very bad at that, and I realize that, and I'm comfortable in my space. So that's about it.
Fair enough. I would do a follow-up episode with you, by the way, just discussing sports persons who you follow very passionately. And I don't want to take that 39-year-old's name in this episode just generally, because that will open up a 3-hour episode over here. No, but I have a quick question for us to end this conversation. And because we've talked at length about sports quizzing in general, Dheera, and you have talked about, following sports for the love of sports, and then quizzing becomes a subset, isn't it? But we do acknowledge the fact that when we, like you just mentioned, you read up so many Abid things, and when one of those things kind of comes up in a quiz, you feel really nice, because first, you are not supposed to know this. It's like going in for an exam which does not have a syllabus, and yet you ace it. I always use that example, but quizzing is pretty much that, isn't it? You don't have a syllabus for a quiz, but you're going in with this.
Yeah, you cannot have a syllabus for a quiz, right?
Exactly.
For example,
So
I can ask a question like, who won? Who was the who won Super Bowl in that particular year, and what something? I can create a question about it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any or for that matter, who was the Indian national badminton champion in 1946, 47? Right. This is the Danish lady. So the point is, any question can be asked. And now what has happened is, with democratization of information on the internet or even otherwise, there is no end to all of those things, right? Everyone has access to everything. True. So I think
no, but if you had to pick one random fact that just popped up in a quiz which you had read somewhere, which made you really happy, if you can remember something.
I will have.
I'm sure there are too many of them, but if you had to pinpoint one, for people listening, because it would be a great example to how things that you just don't expect popping up in places just do in quizzes.
So, okay, I will say that. So this is weird thing, right? So there was a photograph of Nikolai Davydenko. I don't know if it is still there. So this is the 2008 or 9. Titash was my teammate, I think. So this is a Nikolai Davydenko looking very old, very, very old looking Nikolai Davydenko. The ATP website carried the photograph. And I don't remember with whom I was discussing this. Like, why did the ATP, Davydenko was playing very good at that time. This is 2008-9 period where he was actually peaking. And the ATP ran a very nice story on him. And they carried a photograph of him with an umbrella, I think. And it was, I don't remember exactly, but it portrayed a very old man. And I was like, stunned. Why would they project someone who is so, why would they give this photograph? And it was, I read the story and I was discussing this with somebody. I don't remember. Not in general in Calcutta, I think one of the tea addas or something. I don't remember with whom. But no, I think with my friend Bhuvan Pandey, who is a equal tennis aficionado over him, and I was just talking about Davydenko was supposed to play Federer in one of those matches.
Yeah.
So I was saying, yeah, kya photograph diya hai? One of those things. It doesn't look. And at that time, Vishwa Vijay Sen used to conduct a large sports and entertainment quiz duet in Calcutta. And he showed this photograph. I was like, what? This photograph? And I think we were the only team who got that because I just didn't expect that to come in a quiz. But of course, Vishwa Vijay Sen follows his stuff, right? And I was so happy to have cracked that answer because I discussed something with my friend here, and I was discussing Davydenko's matchups with Federer, and then that photograph comes, and you feel good about why you answer certain things, right? One thing from the top of my mind, I think Titash should remember this incident very, very distinctly because he was my teammate. So that I think that is something. Titash and Shaunak were my teammate, I think. So I think that was something that still rings a bell. How did I answer it? So
very interesting.
If you get a chance, I don't know if that image is still there, but that was definitely a very weird image of Davydenko.
True. I'm sure, if we sit down to compile a list of weird answers which you didn't expect to be correct but ended up being correct, it would be quite an interesting conversation over there as well. But thank you so much, Rita. Thank you so much for your time today. And as I said, I'll do a follow-up with you regarding your sporting heroes, which again,
absolutely. Sorry, I went a little, I think,
you didn't go astray at all. Don't worry about it. You went absolutely script perfect.
Yeah, I was speaking from my heart, and I was just being honest about the fact that I'm not perhaps as good as a lot of these people are in quizzing. I'm really amazed. Even I was telling Prithvish, who was my teammate, and the way he comes up with answers in so many different, areas of, genres. You have so many big people, big quizzers, part of the Bombay Quiz Club and other places that I'm associated with. I am really amazed at their, depth, weight, and the way they answer them. But I'm still happy to be where I am and enjoy things that I really like and do.
Everything that he has just said in the last 2 minutes is an absolute lie because he pretty much balls in pretty much every sports quiz that I go to. So don't take that part seriously.
No, I'm not talking about sports quizzes in
general. I'll just edit it out. I'm
just talking about in general.
I edit it. Yeah. I have the control over here to edit things out, so I'll do that. But a very humble Deepanjan Deb over here, guys.
My sports quizzes results are because of my teammates. Let's be honest about it. I am lucky to have Prithvish, who is such a close friend of mine as a teammate. So let's not go into results, but
I'll do a follow up with Prithvish and get the two of you to say who answers more. I'm not going to do that with me sitting in the discussion. I'll just record it and be away and let that happen. But thank you so much, Rita. Thank you so much for taking time out, and we'll do definitely one more episode, and we'll do an Olympic series soon.
That would be absolutely looking forward to the Olympic series, because that's more exciting, right? So absolutely looking forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rita. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.